You're listening to the PZinner Network. For more great podcasts, go to pzinner.com.au.
PZinner
and Co!
Turning the page and leaning into the microphone, the narrator scanned the text. As the music rose, he announced, in his calmest, clearest voice, "You're listening to a Please Attend Carefully narration." While the doctor was battling depression, his greatest enemy, the Master, was teetering on the verge of madness. His descent into savagery on the cheetah planet, after his last encounter with the Doctor, had tipped the balance of a mind always prone to paranoia over into uncontrollable obsession. Having now regained enough control to make his escape, the Master was determined to destroy the Doctor once and for all, even if it meant he had to die in the process. He was sitting by a dying campfire on a distant desert planet on the remote fringes of Mutter's Spiral. This planet was inhabited by a handful of ferocious life forms and an equally ferocious humanoid species, the Morgs. It was midnight, and he was surrounded by savages, wrapped in skins. Skeletally thin with warped, bony faces, the Morgs lived on roots and insects and fruit, and the flesh of such small animals as they could catch. In fact, they would eat anything that didn't eat them. They were a miserable tribe of half-starved barbarians, but they had one great secret, something that was worth coming all this way to find. They could cheat death. The Master threw open the treasure chest he had brought from his TARDIS. There were silver goblets, gold trinkets, priceless gems, a necklace of diamonds, a sapphire tiara, the casual loot of 1,000 crimes. It meant nothing to him. He had even offered it to Sabalon Glitz once as a bribe. Not that he'd have ever handed it over, of course. Despite, or perhaps because of, their poverty, the Morgs had a love of jewels and precious metals that amounted to worship. They probably did worship them, thought the Master, carrying them off to some hidden altar. He lifted a diamond necklace from the chest and turned it in his hands, making it sparkle in the firelight. As the old chief reached out a bony hand, the Master dropped the necklace back into the chest and slammed it shut. "You know what I want." The old chief, in turn, took the lid from a crude clay pot at his feet. Inside there writhed a cluster of dark and slimy creatures, half hidden in a bed of leaves. He replaced the lid and offered the pot to the Master, who shook his head. "First I must have proof." The old chief pointed to one of the Morgs around the fire.
Kill him.
Suspecting a trap, the Master drew back. "I'm not your butcher. Kill him yourself." With terrifying speed, the old chief whipped a long knife from beneath his skins and thrust it deep into the tribesman's heart. The man fell, twitched for a moment, and then died in silence.
"Watch,"
said the old chief. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, something black, slimy and snake-like, slid from the dead man's mouth. It reared up, showing 2 red eyes and a slit of a mouth, and seemed to look round the silent circle of tribesmen, as if searching. Suddenly it flashed through the air, and one of the Morgs fell back choking. For a moment he writhed, clutching at his throat, and then he became calm, resuming his place by the fire. The old chief jabbed the man he had killed with his foot.
"His spirit now lives in him."
He pointed to the Morg now sitting peacefully by the fire.
How does it work?
Asked the Master, eagerly.
You swallow the death worm before you go into danger. It becomes dormant and lives inside your body. If you are killed, it absorbs your essence, body, and spirit. It lives on in your remains, in the ashes, even, if the body is burned. As soon as it can, it seeks a new host. It takes over the host and then it dies. But you live again in a new body.
Eyes gleaming, the master picked up the clay pot and clasped it to him. Leaving the treasure chest behind, he strode towards his TARDIS, which now looked like a pillar of red sandstone. The master smiled in the darkness. What exquisite revenge, to destroy the Doctor by becoming the Doctor. Or rather, by forcing the Doctor to become him. All he had to do now was get himself killed. In his TARDIS, the master smiled in triumph, regarding the wriggling creature in the glass dish before him. In his laboratory, using the techniques of accelerated genetic engineering, he had reprogrammed, modified, and improved the deathworms, giving them much boosted capabilities. True, he'd killed all but one of them in the process, but one super deathworm remained, and that was enough. He was sure his scheme would work. The Doctor never could resist a good sob story, and once the Doctor was alone with the Master's remains, he saw by the decrease in the rise and fall of the time rotor that he had nearly reached his destination. It was time. With a grimace of distaste, the Master picked up the glass dish, tilted his head back, opened his mouth, and let the deathworm slither down his throat. His TARDIS landed. Opening the doors, the Master stepped out into a metal plane, surrounded by metal towers. Behind him, his TARDIS, obeying preset instructions, dematerialized. It would be safe in the space-time continuum until he recovered it. Alone and unafraid, the Master stood in the center of the metal plane and watched the metallic creatures gliding towards him. They gathered around him in a menacing circle, still too astonished to speak. The Master threw back his head and laughed.
Yes, it's me, your old ally, the Master. What have you got to say for yourselves, you stupid tin boxes?